ready for kids to not like school and to act out in normal kid ways. And I was prepared with fidgets and natural consequences and building relationships. But the system was not prepared for the volume and the scale of behaviors that they are seeing right now.
I teach 7th grade, they are still performing on the 4th grade level.
It would benefit you to watch his entire video because he breaks it down about how, and that's the kids that are doing well. Because I also teach 7th grade, and we have kids that have math grade level equivalents of 1st and 2nd grade, 3rd grade, many at 4th grade, very few at grade level, very few, if any, in some classes.
Cecilia Regina here. Some of you may know I worked as a teacher for years. I am no longer a full-time teacher, but I still work with children. And I wanted to stitch these 2 clips or 3 clips, whatever you want to call it, together because together they tell the full story. So the first woman who said children's behaviors are now off the charts, literally, and these school interventions are no longer sufficient to deal with them. She goes on to say she feels like it's because of the trauma of the pandemic. You know, how you had to go on about normal life, even though the world was collapsing around you and you had a hard time with that as an adult. Children could not process this cognitive dissonance, and now it is showing up in their behavior. And these 2 people in the second video were talking about how children come to school not knowing anything, and it was exacerbated by the pandemic. And I feel like all of these things are true, but they needed more to knit them together. So I'm going to give my thoughts. I started teaching full time in 2015. So the pandemic and whatnot was not a factor. I already saw behavior ramping up. For an example, I taught 5th grade. For an example, my second year, I had the former 4th graders, obviously, and I got to watch them interacting with their teacher the entire year before I taught them. There was this one boy, I will not say his name. His teacher ended up filing a lawsuit against the school for which she was fired because he did a number of things, and one of them was to cause her to break her ankle. He spit on her, he slapped her, he did a lot of things I'm not even sure I can mention on here, and the school did nothing to intervene. She asked repeatedly for interventions, for help. They did nothing but create a more hostile environment. So I started out very defensive because they also it was very unprofessional. They spread rumors about this woman. They did all kinds of things to make it seem like it was on her. But I started out with the notion that this child was probably very dangerous. Because while I never had a physical altercation with any of my students, I did have situations where they were clearly in the wrong and the administration did not support me. So I came in with plans in place to always be able to keep my physical distance from this student. You know, I had him up front next to my desk just so I could always keep an eye on him. And even then, the amount of things he did was ridiculous. I had a school-issued iPad. I literally put it on my desk for all of 5 minutes one day. This was actually at the end of the year. I thought we had finally reached a sort of a detente. He took it and gouged the screen out. Took less than a minute. Had a vase on my desk that, I kept full of flowers, and he broke it on purpose one day, just threw my vase to the floor. Just continual stuff like that. And when I would go to the admin about it and, complain about the student who they knew was a very seriously problem child, they would do nothing or put it back on me. Oh, well, you got to have better control. You got to do this. You got to do that. I gave you all that background to say that was in 2016. I had maybe 3 or 4 students like that, and he was the worst of the bunch, obviously. My first year, I had 1 or 2 students like that. My next year, there were 3 or 4 with really extreme behavior and really extreme circumstances, because obviously, you call home for these kids and the parents are, telling you to do nothing. This boy, when he broke my vase, I met his mother at pickup and told her what happened, and she did beat him all around the parking lot. But a lot of kids just get, that they get these extreme reactions. They never get any consistent talking to, discipline, care. And from the things his mother would tell me about how he would stay up all night long playing video games. Why would you tell somebody that about your 5th grader? Like, clearly you don't do anything with them. You just want your life to go on uninterrupted, and you don't care what they do as long as they don't bother you. So all these things are connected. I've seen a ramping up every single year of children with extreme behavior. And now, as the first teacher said, it's 60, 70, 80% of kids in the classroom with extreme behavior. All these kids are reaching the maximum level of intervention that schools have to offer. Suspensions, expulsions, and schools are just not designed to be able to handle that many extreme students. And why are we reaching this nexus? Why do kids have extreme behavior and also almost zero knowledge? Because of the way they are not being parented. And we see this explosion of behavior post-pandemic because most of them spent a year, 2 year, whatever it was in your area, inside with no real human contact. A lot of people's parents threw them in a room with a laptop or an iPad and said, get off my nerves. And every time they made a noise or whatever, their parents shoved something in there to make them be quiet. Here, have some food. Here, have more screen time. Have more of this. Anything to keep you from bothering me. Because the truth is, a lot of people just have children accidentally. And then they drag them up. They do not raise them. Their children are just there and they want the least amount of inconvenience possible. They're going to throw them some chicken nuggets. They're going to throw them more screens. They're going to throw them more items, but they are not going to do anything to interact with them. And consequently, when we came back in person, the behavior was off any measurable scale. These children have had the run of their space, whatever that space was, a bedroom, a living room, or whatever, for the past couple of years. So obviously they're not going to be able to get back in a classroom setting, sit in seats and follow instructions. They're not going to be able to follow a lesson, as the third woman was saying. Kids, you tell them something and they can't repeat it back in a lesson. They can't take simple instruction. Yeah, of course they can't. They haven't been taking any. And to be fair, some of this is not outright neglect. Some of this is, some parents are in impossible circumstances. They do love their children and whatnot, but they have to work ever so many hours. All I'll say is, remember during the pandemic how many people were getting exposed via their children's Zoom classrooms? We saw children going through real-time abuse. Even one person had their parent, unalived on the screen where everybody could see. You just don't know what's happening in these homes. And it is my belief that all this stuff is more common than any of us have ever known. And this is why children are coming to school in the state that they're coming in. And I do not know what can be done on a community level as an intervention. I really do not know. At this point, it might be better to have children in boarding schools like other countries do year round as just a sort of a national thing, because a lot of people have children and have no intention of ever raising them. They put no care and consideration into it. And I think probably the majority of people in this country are just letting their children fend for themselves. They feed them, they clothe them, they put a roof over their heads, they make sure they have everything their children need. But when it comes to actual interaction, they are missing in action. And I'm just telling you what I've seen, because I have now taught in 2 different states. I have taught in multiple cities. I have taught at every grade level, and I'm seeing the same thing consistently. So that's it. Like and follow for more, and I want to hear your thoughts below. Parents, children, other teachers.